Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Joy Learning TV.
And learners, it's good to see you again. You are welcome to Junior High School R on your favorite Joy Learning TV. As usual, when you see me, it means that we have RME. So today we are going to have another interesting RME lesson for JHS2. And we are looking at the topic religious personalities and moral teachings. Religious personalities and moral teachings. And our subtopic for discussion is religious personalities. So if you recall, we have done 3 of our religious personalities already. And so we are moving on to the 4th one. But before we do that, let's quickly go through our lesson objectives. We have just 2 lesson objectives for our lesson today. And we are expected by the end of the lesson to be able to discuss the life of Joseph. So in our lesson today, we are looking at Joseph. So 1, we are expected to discuss everything that has got to do with Joseph. And then 2, identify at least 4 lessons learned from the life of our religious personality under discussion for today. Good. I want us to quickly go through or review our previous lesson. Like I said earlier, we have done 3 of our patriarchs already. We have done Abraham, we have done Isaac, and we have done Jacob. So we are going to review our lesson on Jacob. So as clearly seen in our illustration, Jacob was a twin. He was the younger of the twin. So his elder or the other twin was called Esau, and he was Jacob. And then in our previous lesson, we learned that the name Jacob means deceiver. And as we review, we will know why he was called the deceiver. Jacob was the second of the twins of Rebekah and Isaac. So Jacob's parents were Rebekah and Isaac. And then we also learned that Jacob bought the birthright of his twin brother. So Esau exchanged his birthright for food. So it means that he sold it to Jacob for food. And then we also learned that Jacob stole his twin brother's blessing. This was when he disguised himself so that he would appear like Esau in order to receive the blessing that was meant for Esau. So he stole it. In our previous lesson, we also learned that Jacob escaped to Haran and got married to Leah and Racheal. So he traveled, or he escaped. He ran away to his maternal uncle. And then over there, for 14 years, he married those 2 sisters. And then we also learned that Jacob had 12 sons and 1 daughter. Okay. Again, we learned that he returned to his country, and on his way he had an encounter with God. And that was during which period he got his name changed from Jacob, the deceiver, to Israel. Okay. Then he returned and got reunited with his brother after so many years. We also learned that Jacob obeyed God and God blessed him. Then We also learned that Jacob moved to Egypt and died over there at the age of 147. So at 147, Jacob died. Now we move on to today's lesson. So we have discussed Abraham, we have discussed his son Isaac, and we have also discussed one of Isaac's son, Jacob. And so we are moving to the fourth person on that patriarch, on that line, who is Joseph. So we are looking at the fourth patriarch. And we are discussing Joseph. Okay. So let's look at the birth of Joseph. Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob. Remember, in our review, we said that Jacob had 12 sons and 1 daughter. So the 11th son of Jacob was named Joseph. But he was the first son of Jacob and Racheal. Okay. Then Jacob loved Joseph so much that he sewed a special coat of many colors for him. So Joseph, a coat of many colors, are synonymous. Once you hear them, the coat of many colors, then it means that we are referring to Joseph. And it was gifted to him by his father because he was his favorite among all his children. And because of this, his siblings were unhappy and they hated him. Well, why would our father specially treat Joseph this way? There were older ones, there were younger ones. Remember, Benjamin is there after Joseph. So Jacob wasn't even treating the lastborn, especially as he was treating Joseph. So this made his siblings hate him. Okay. His immediate brother was Benjamin. So Racheal had Joseph and Benjamin. And his other siblings were Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah, Zebulun, Issachar, Dan, Gad, Asher, and Naphtali. So these were the other brothers of Joseph. But his immediate brother from the same mother and the same father was Benjamin. Then two, we are looking at Joseph's prophetic dreams. So we are done with his birth and his family. So we are looking at Joseph's prophetic dreams. Joseph had 2 dreams as a revelation from God of becoming a ruler. So as we go on, we'll get to know what was in those 2 dreams that he had. And when he had a dream, he informed his father and his siblings about the dreams that he had. Okay, so let's look at what went on in the first dream. So in the first dream, the family was binding sheaves. They were in the fields. They were binding sheaves in the field. And his sheaf arose and stood upright. And those of his brothers bowed down to it. So that was his first dream. Whilst he and his family were in the field and they were gathering the sheaves, the one that he was gathering stood up and all others bowed to his sheaf. Then in the second dream, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars also bowed to him. Okay, so we'll get to know what the sun represented, what the moon represented, and what the 11 stars also represented. So when he had told this dream to his father, we are told that his father rebuked him by implying that he was going to rule over all of them. So if the sun was bowing to him, which was his father. The moon was also bowing to him, and the stars, which represented his father, his brothers, sorry, were all bowing to him. He got rebuked by his father. And we are learning that the dream made his brothers hate him the more, but the father kept the matter in his mind. Remember that in the first instance, they had started hating him because of the present that his father gave him, or the gift, which is the coat of many colors that their father gave him. And here he comes again with two different dreams, implying that both his parents and his brothers were going to bow to him, or he was going to rule over them. 3. Let's look at Joseph sold into slavery by his brothers. So one day Jacob sent Joseph to his brothers in the field to see if things were going on well with them in the fields. And as soon as they saw their brother coming, they planned to kill him. Remember that because of the dream and how their father treated him, the brothers hated him. So they planned to kill him. Okay, just so that his dreams will be cut short. But Reuben refused the idea of killing him and rather suggested that they threw him into a pit. Okay, so they all sided with Reuben. They decided not to kill him, but to throw him into the pit. So they stripped him of the coat of many colors that he was wearing and threw him into a nearby pit. So as we can clearly see in the picture on our screen, the brothers are throwing him into a pit nearby. So soon after, they saw some Ishmaelites passing to Egypt on their trade business, and they all agreed that they should sell Joseph rather than leaving him in the pit. So they sold their brother for 20 shekels of silver. So in this illustration, they had collected the money from the Ishmaelites and they were taking Joseph away. So you can see Joseph trying to free himself so that he goes back with his brothers. But they had already sold him. Okay. When they did this, they needed to say something to their father. So they killed an animal, they killed a goat, and dipped Joseph's coat in the blood of the animal they killed, so that when they went back, they would tell their father that some wild animal had killed their brother. So they returned and showed the coat of many colors that was stained with blood, the blood of an animal, and showed it to their father and lied to him that some wild animal had killed their brother, who was Joseph. Okay, so you can imagine the pain that Jacob would go through. His favorite son was dead. So you can imagine the kind of pain and the kind of anguish that he was going through. So let's look at Joseph's servitude under Potiphar and his temptation. So Joseph had been sold to the Ishmaelites for 20 shekels of silver. And when these traders arrived in Egypt, they sold Joseph to Potiphar. So he had been sold once, he was sold the second time to Potiphar, who was a captain of Pharaoh's guard. And we are told that the Lord was with Joseph and gave him favor in the eyes of Potiphar. So he made Joseph the caretaker of his house and properties. Okay, So this goes back to Abraham, to Isaac, to Jacob, and now to Joseph. They had a covenant with God. So regardless of whatever they were going through, the blessings of God was still upon them. God still had his eyes upon them. So even when he was sold into slavery, we are being told that God still favored him, and so he became the caretaker in Potiphar's house. Okay. Then we are looking at Joseph interprets Pharaoh's dreams. Pharaoh had a dream and invited his magicians and wise men to interpret it. But we are told that none of them were able to interpret the dream to the king. But remember that before Pharaoh's dream, Joseph had interpreted a dream in prison. That is not part of our lesson, and so I wouldn't want to go into details. But Joseph had interpreted dreams of two people who were in prison with him, and those dreams that he interpreted came to pass. So we are being told here that Pharaoh also had a dream. He had two different dreams. In one day, or when he went to bed, he had two different dreams. So we can clearly see from this illustration, Pharaoh sleeping, and then we see two different sets of cows. So we see 7 cows on the left, we see 7 on the right. Okay, so let's go back to this dream. So in his first dream, he was sitting by the Nile, and then he saw 7 fat cows come out of the Nile. So let's look at how the cows on the left look like and how the cows on the right also look like. So the ones on the left are fat, they look nourished, and the ones on the left look ugly, and they look like they've not been eating for months. Okay, so in his dream, the ugly cows swallowed up the fat and flourishing cows. Okay, so when he had the dream, he woke up and he was surprised at this kind of dream. Then he fell asleep again, and he had another dream. In the second dream, there was a grain. Okay, so one stalk of grain had 7 different heads, and they also looked well. They were growing well. It looked like it was grown on a good soil. Then he also saw that on one stalk there was also 7 heads of grains, which looked not so good as compared to the first one. And the grain that looked malnourished, okay, swallowed up the grains that looked well. So he woke up and he was just astonished. He was surprised at the dream that he had. And we are told that he invited all the magicians in the palace and all those whom he felt could interpret the dream to him, but all of them were unable to. Then this cupbearer, remember that I said when Joseph was in prison, he interpreted the dreams of some 2 people, and the cupbearer was one of them. So the cupbearer lives in the king's palace. Okay, so he is responsible for serving all the drinks of the king. So the cupbearer remembered that whilst he was in prison and he had a dream, it was Joseph who interpreted the dream. So at this point, he had to recommend Joseph to the king, Pharaoh. So after Joseph was invited to the palace, and after prayers, he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams. So in the interpretation of the dream, Joseph told the king that there was going to be 7 years of bumper harvest. So it means that those cows that looked good and the grains that looked good represented 7 years of bumper harvest, and the cows that looked sick and the grains that looked malnourished also represented 7 years of famine. So famine is a period where there is no food, or food is not in abundance. Okay, so Joseph interpreted this dream to Pharaoh. And we are told that Pharaoh was happy about the dream interpretation, and so he made Joseph ruler next in command to him. He couldn't have looked for, or he couldn't have found any better person than Joseph, who interpreted the dream to him. So the king bestowed honor on Joseph and made him supervisor, responsible for buying food and storing them during the period of the bumper harvest. And we are told that after 7 years, the famine really came. So there was famine in the whole land of Egypt and its environs, or the other towns that surrounded Egypt. So because there was famine everywhere, it means that where Joseph's brothers and their father lived, there was also famine. They were also experiencing famine over them. So they were sent by Jacob to go to Egypt to buy some food. So in this picture, we see Jacob sending his sons to go from Canaan to Egypt to go and look for food. And then they got to Egypt. When they got there, we are told that Joseph recognized them. He recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. So Joseph alleged that his brothers were spies and treated them harshly. The brothers maintained that they were not spies and that they were just there to buy food, to buy grains. Okay. So in the process, or whilst trying to explain themselves to Joseph that they had not come there as spies, but only to buy food, in an attempt to plead, just so Joseph had mercy on them, they bowed. Now we have two pictures on your screen. This one is the one on my left, is Joseph with his brothers bowing to him. In this case, they are begging him so that he doesn't consider them as spies. And then let's look at the picture on our right, where Joseph was telling his brothers the dream that he had, where the sheaves that they were gathering all bowed to his sheaf. And so his dream here had come true. Exactly. Okay. So Joseph demanded that if truly they said that they are not spies, they should bring their younger brother, who was Benjamin, so that just to confirm what they have said, that they were not spies. Then he also asked them to leave one of their brothers behind, just to make sure that they will return with Benjamin, who was the direct brother to Joseph. So Simon was left behind. He was left in custody whilst the other brothers left. So soon they got home with the food that they have bought, and their food got finished. And so they were sent again to Egypt to go and get more food. And then they told their father that for them to be able to go back to Egypt, they had to take their brother Benjamin along. This was what Joseph requested. So after a series of persuasions, Jacob agreed and released Benjamin so that he would go with them to Egypt. And when Joseph saw them again, he quickly left them and wept bitterly in his room. Here he has seen his brother Benjamin. So was it tears of joy? Eventually he was seeing all his brothers. Then he ordered that more food should be given to them and their monies given back to them. So Joseph finally made himself known to his brothers. So he revealed himself to his brothers that I am your brother, the one you sold to the Ishmaelites. Okay. So the message got to Pharaoh that the brothers of Joseph had come from Canaan to Egypt to come and get food. So Pharaoh ordered that they should be given more food. And Joseph later sent for his father. Okay, so in our picture, you can see that Joseph has reunited with his father and the entire family. So all his brothers, together with his father, came back to him in Egypt. So Joseph told Pharaoh about the arrival of his father and brothers in Egypt, and Pharaoh then gave them a place in Goshen where they could settle. So they were given a special kind of treatment. Remember that their brother was the second in command after Pharaoh. And we are told that after the death of Jacob, Joseph cared well for his brothers to their surprise, and their descendants multiplied in Egypt. So Joseph was married to Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, who was the priest from the city of On. So Joseph's wife was called Asenath. And Joseph gave birth to two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. So if you have heard Manasseh and Ephraim, they were the sons of Joseph. We are told that at 110, Joseph died. Okay. So Jacob died at 147 and Joseph died at 110 years. Now let's go to our second objective, which is the moral lessons that we learn from the life of Joseph. So one, Joseph was a dreamer at his youthful age. So we should also have dreams and pray to God that our dreams will be fulfilled. So it is not bad to have dreams. Dream of what you want to become in future. Dream of how big you want to become in future. It is not bad at all to have dreams. But then when you have had the dreams, you should pray to God so that He will help those dreams to be fulfilled. 2, Joseph was faithful to God. Joseph was faithful to God. He avoided immorality to an extent that he ran away from Potiphar's wife when he was tempted. So whilst living in Potiphar's house, his wife tempted him. He wanted to have an affair with him. But because he was a child of God, he didn't want to disobey God. He ran away, and that's how come he ended up in prison to get the opportunity to interpret the dreams of those two people, and then he eventually ended up in Pharaoh's house. So we should also learn to run away from evil acts. So it's not just about fornication. There are so many evil acts that we know, including stealing, fighting, gossiping. We should learn to stay away from all these things so that we also receive God's blessings. So in this picture, he was running away from Potiphar's wife because he didn't want to disobey God. Then 3, he depended on God even when he was in prison. So we should also learn to trust and depend on God, especially when we are in difficult times, when we are not having everything going on well for us. If our parents are unable to provide what we need, we still should learn to trust and depend on God. The 4th lesson we are learning from Joseph is that he was not arrogant. With his sudden prosperity in Egypt, when he was given office of authority by the king. So even when he became the second in command to king of Egypt, he was still humble. So how do we apply that to our lives? We shouldn't be swollen-headed. We shouldn't be arrogant, especially if we get wealth or we get power or we are in authority. So for example, you are made the class prefect and all of a sudden you start insulting people and treating them anyhow. It means that you are not being humble. You are lording over the people you are supposed to be serving, and that is such a bad attitude. And 5, Joseph forgave his brothers and reconciled with them. So we should also forgive. We should learn to forgive those who offend us. We should let go of the offense that people or the wrong that people have committed against us and reconcile with them. And this is how we learn to live in peace in our communities or in our society. Then 6, Joseph showed generosity by having meals with his brothers, and he gave them sufficient food to take back home. So we must also learn to be generous. We must learn to show kindness to people, especially those who are in need. Good. So all too soon we have come to the end of our lesson. But let's take our assessment. So I have just 4 questions here for assessment. We are solving them here and now. Okay. So 1 is, how many times did Pharaoh dream? How many times did Pharaoh dream? And 2, who recommended Joseph to Pharaoh? Who recommended Joseph to Pharaoh? And 3, how many years was the famine expected to last? And the last one, which river was mentioned in Pharaoh's dreams? So you have 4 questions. I think this should be done in 10 seconds. So we are just counting down to 10 and we should be able to finish. Okay, so our 10 seconds is up for us to finish our assessment questions. So how many times did Pharaoh dream? Who recommended Joseph to Pharaoh? How many years was the famine expected to last? And lastly, which river was mentioned in Pharaoh's dreams? So I just wish you could whisper your answers to me. But if you had these as your answers, it means that you are correct. Good. So our first question, our answer is twice. So Pharaoh had two different dreams. And two, who recommended Joseph to the king? It was the king's cupbearer whom he met in prison. Then question 3, how many years was the famine expected to last? It was supposed to last for 7 years. So there was going to be 7 years of bumper harvest and then 7 years of famine. Then the last question, which river was mentioned in Pharaoh's dream? So it was the Nile. So if you had all these correct, okay, so I'm clapping for you. If you had 3, I'm giving you thumbs up. If you had 2, what should I give? Okay, so well done to all of us, especially to those of us who had all questions correct. Okay, now let's take our assignments, our questions for our assignment. And we have just one question. Explain how you can apply any 4 lessons about Joseph to your life. Explain how you can apply any 4 lessons about Joseph to your life. So just take a shot if you have a phone, or if you are writing, I expect that you write a bit faster. Okay, so just one question. Explain how you can apply any 4 lessons about Joseph to your own life. Good. If you have written this question, remember to take time to solve the question and submit it to @Joy Learning TV on Facebook and YouTube. @Joy Learning TV on Facebook and YouTube, and I'll take time to go through it and get you a feedback. Okay, let's go through our lesson before we bring it to a close. So we are recapping, we are going over our lesson. And in today's lesson, we learned that Joseph was the 11th son of Jacob. We also learned that he was his father's favorite. Yes, that was how come he gave him the gifts, which was the coat of many colors. We also learned that he dreamt that his brothers were bowing to him, and his brothers hated him and sold him to the Ishmaelites and then to Pharaoh in Egypt. Then in Egypt, he interpreted Pharaoh's dreams. We also learned that he became the second in command to Pharaoh. So in the absence of Pharaoh, it was Joseph who acted. Then we also learned that his brothers eventually bowed to him. So his dream came to pass. Then he reconciled with his family after so many years of being sold to the Ishmaelites, and then eventually to Potiphar's house. So all too soon we have come to the end of our lesson. I hope that you enjoyed it and had a nice time. Remember that the essence of this lesson is that you are supposed to apply the lessons from Joseph to our own lives. We are supposed to take the good things that Joseph did in this lesson and apply it to our own lives. Thank you for sticking and staying until we meet again for another interesting RME lesson. It is a bye-bye from me.
Joy Learning TV.